All right, so we've all seen a company's annual report, right? That massive document that comes out once a year. But let's be honest, in today's fast-moving market, a year can feel like a lifetime. So how do you actually keep an eye on a company's performance between those big reports? Well, that's where a really important accounting standard called IAS 34 comes into play. Think of it as a company's essential mid-year health check.
And this really is the million-dollar question for any investor, isn't it? If you have to wait a full year for an update, you're practically flying blind. A company's fortunes can pivot on a dime in just a few months. So how do we get a reliable snapshot of their financial health without having to wait for that giant annual document? This is the exact problem that interim financial reporting, all guided by IAS 34, is built to solve.
So first things first, let's talk about the why. Why do these reports even exist? Well, think of an interim report as a regular pulse check for a business. It's not the full head-to-toe physical exam that you get with an annual report. Nope. Instead, it's a quick, vital signs check designed to give timely information and just keep everyone up to speed.
The official definition is actually pretty straightforward. It's any financial report that covers a period shorter than a full financial year. But the key word here is update. The standard's main goal is to help investors, and really anyone interested, understand how well a company is generating earnings and cash flow. It's all about delivering clear, timely insights.
Here's the difference in a nutshell. An annual report, that's the full yearly physical. It's comprehensive, it's detailed, it's the whole shebang. But an interim report, that's the quick, regular pulse check. It's a focused update that lets you monitor the company's health much closer to real time. It's not about repeating old information, it's all about highlighting what's new and what's changed since the last big report.
Okay, so if an interim report is just an update, what exactly has to be in it? IAS 34 is actually very clear about the minimum requirements. This makes sure these reports are genuinely useful without being a massive, costly headache for companies to produce every few months.
At a bare minimum, every single interim report has to include these 5 key components. Now, you'll probably recognize the big 4 financial statements there, but notice that key word, condensed. And then there's that 5th piece, these selected explanatory notes, and trust me, that's where the real story is often hiding. We're going to circle back to that one. So what does condensed actually mean here? It doesn't mean they can just randomly leave things out. The report has to include the same major headings and subtotals that you saw in the last annual report. That's for comparability, but it provides less detail under those headings. The whole point here is to be efficient, to give a meaningful update quickly and without the huge cost of preparing a full-blown financial statement every quarter. Remember, it's an update, not a do-over.
All right, now for the golden rule. This part is absolutely critical. To make sure these mid-year check-ins are actually reliable, companies have to follow a very strict principle for how they calculate their numbers. This stops them from, painting a rosier picture in one quarter only to have it fall apart later.
And here it is, plain and simple. A company has to use the exact same accounting policies for its interim reports as it does for its annual one. You can't just come up with a new way to value your inventory for Q2 just to make the numbers look a little better. Consistency is king.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Here's the logic straight from the source. The standard makes it crystal clear that just because you're reporting more often, that shouldn't change the final annual number. An interim period is treated as just one part of the whole financial year, not as some standalone island. Everything is measured on a year-to-date basis, which makes sure each quarterly report is a solid building block towards that final accurate annual picture.
Okay, let's get back to my favorite part, the story behind the numbers. Remember those selected explanatory notes we mentioned? This is where the action is. This whole section is designed to tell you what's new, what's different, and what's significant since the company's last big annual report.
The entire reason these notes exist is to bring the reader up to speed. They basically assume you've got access to the last annual report, so they don't waste your time repeating stuff you already know. Instead, they have this laser-like focus on explaining the really important events and transactions that have shaped the company over the last few months.
So what should you be looking for? Well, the standard gives us a great list of examples. Has the company settled a huge lawsuit? Did they just buy a competitor or sell off a major factory? Did they default on a loan? These are the kinds of game-changing events that can seriously alter a company's path, and if they're significant, they have to be disclosed in these notes. This is your roadmap to understanding the real story of the quarter.
So, let's bring it all home. Why does all of this really matter? Well, this entire standard, all these rules and components, they ultimately boil down to one thing: building trust through timely and transparent communication.
And timeliness isn't just a vague concept here. The standard actually encourages companies to publish these reports within 60 days of the interim period's end. Why so fast? Because that speed ensures the information is still relevant. In the world of finance, old news isn't very helpful when you're trying to make decisions about the future.
And in the end, that's what the entire IAS 34 framework is for. By requiring a consistent, reliable, and timely pulse check on a company's financial health, it empowers everyone, investors, lenders, you name it, to make smarter, more confident decisions. It really helps level the playing field and cuts down on uncertainty in the market.
So the next time you see a company release its quarterly or half-year results, you'll know the rules of the game. You'll know what to look for beyond just the headline numbers. You'll look at the condensed statements, and more importantly, you'll dive into those explanatory notes. The only question is, what story are you going to uncover?